Now, you've worked with this director before.
I have, a couple times.
Well, at this point, is it like a foregone conclusion that you're gonna that he's gonna find a role for you, or you're gonna go for a role in one of his movies, or sort of, I guess, what discussion happens to sort of find something for you to work into the movie?
Well, it doesn't really work like that. I mean, we did Underworld together. We didn't know each other, and then we did the sequel to that, you know, immediately, and then he did Die Hard, and the part of John McClane was taken, unfortunately. And then when he signed on to do this, I actually, during the sort of whole pre-production process, we were both very aware of the fact that I wasn't available to do it. So I didn't think about that at all. And then our dates shifted a little bit, and I think between Len and the studio, they both... it'd be nice if it was only your husband you had to convince, but unfortunately the studio has to be into it. So yeah, so that was really what it was. But it's not like we cruise around looking for stuff to do together. It just kind of shook down that way.
Of course, of course. Well, this character is sort of a composite of two characters that were in the original film. What challenge, if any, did that present to you? If there was any sort of context of the original when you guys sort of started working on this? I mean, there are a lot of differences, but there also are a lot of similarities.
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, to be honest, I wasn't really paying much attention to the original because the tone is so vastly different. If you transplanted Sharon Stone's performance into our movie, it would be bizarre, and if you transplanted any of ours into that movie, it would be very different. You know, it wouldn't work. So there wasn't really anything to kind of terribly try and avoid or emulate or anything. It just seems like a very different vibe. And I think I didn't watch the original before we did the movie. I mean, I'd seen it, you know, several times, but I just think that it's not very creative to be trying to do something different from somebody else or the same as somebody else. So I just prefer to kind of meet my character on its own terms.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Well, I guess sort of further along those lines, like, at this point with Hollywood sort of remaking movies so frequently, has the stigma sort of gone away from that, or do you feel like you might have had trepidations at first going into a movie that has such an iconic predecessor?
I don't know. I grew up in England, so I'm used to having seen, you know, several different versions of plays that I'm familiar with a lot. So, you know, I go and see one person's Hamlet, and then I'm very excited to see somebody else's Hamlet. So I don't fully understand why there's that kind of slight freak out about just seeing a familiar story from another perspective, because that's what I grew up doing.
Mm-hmm. Well, Last Days of Disco just came out on Blu-ray, and it reminded me of, you know, sort of your early stuff like that and Shooting Fish, which are these sort of great movies where you're so different from the roles that you take now. Did you foresee at that point that you would be in a position where, you know, 10 or 12 or 15 years later, you'd be like beating the crap out of somebody in a movie
really,
of this size?
I mean, one of the things that I really wanted to do was to do as many different things as possible, and I feel you probably haven't seen Snow Angels and Nothing But the Truth, which are, you know, a little bit more in that vein, but fewer people see them because they're not really on the side of buses and things like that. So I think these ones are very much more visible, but in the same way as I used to, as much as I can do different things, that's what I like doing.